Hey everyone, welcome back to Higher Learning Test Prep's online video tutorial series. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the common SAT grammatical errors, the misplaced modifier. So let's take a look. Okay, so number 7 reads, selected as an astronaut by NASA in 1990, over 719 hours in space were spent by Dr. Ellen Ochoa on 3 flights by 2001. And of course, while we can get the meaning of this sentence, there is a grammatical error here. This phrase at the beginning is a modifying phrase. That's why this mistake that we're going to find is a misplaced modifier. This is a modifying phrase, an inessential clause, because it's not absolutely essential for the meaning of the sentence. In fact, we could just get rid of it and read, over 719 hours in space were spent by Dr. Ellen Ochoa on 3 flights by 2001. Okay, so that sentence would make sense without this extra information. This extra information modifies, but is not entirely essential for the meaning of the sentence. Now, if we add this information, we want to be clear about who we're talking about. Are we talking about the subject of the sentence or not? In this case, we have to assume that this modifying phrase, because of its location, is referring to the subject of the sentence. And the subject of this sentence is 719 hours. So 719 hours was not selected as an astronaut by NASA, of course. Dr. Ellen Ochoa was. So we have to change the construction of the sentence so that we're clear that this modifying phrase, selected as an astronaut by NASA in 1990, is correctly referring to the subject, which should be Dr. Ellen Ochoa. So Dr. Ellen Ochoa should be right here after this comma. Okay, so right away we know, because it's a misplaced modifier and where Dr. Ellen Ochoa should be, that A, B, and C are incorrect. Now we're looking at D and E. So let's see. Selected as an astronaut by NASA in 1990, Dr. Ellen Ochoa by 2001 spending over 719 hours in space on 3 flights. Well, it sounds a little weird. One of the things to look out for on the test is that ing constructions of verbs are typically not right, especially if it's the main verb in a sentence. Ing constructions are going to be wrong. So E is going to be our best answer here. Selected as an astronaut by NASA in 1990, Dr. Ellen Ochoa had spent over 719 hours in space on 3 flights by 2001. Correct answer. We're using the right verb construction, had spent. Most importantly, we've corrected the modifying error. That is, this phrase, selected as an astronaut, is referring to the subject of the sentence, Dr. Ellen Ochoa. Okay, let's try one more and make sure we got this. Okay, so number 12 reads, walking down the street, a piano hit me on the head. Now, as it's currently written, this modifying phrase, walking down the street, must refer to the subject of the sentence. So it sounds as if a piano is walking down the street. Like a piano is some gangster hitting people up for money. Hey, dude, you owe me money. But the deal is, of course, that the piano is not walking down the street unless this is some cartoon or something. It is the person who was hit on the head by a piano that is walking down the street. So we need to put the person at the beginning where the piano is if we want the sentence to read correctly. So we can cross out everything with a piano at the beginning, because unless this is a cartoon, the piano is not walking down the street. So looking at C and D, we see walking down the street, I was hit on the head by a piano, looks pretty good. And then I was being hit on the head by a piano. Again, remember these ing constructions are problematic on the SAT. An ing is not a good verb for the main verb in a sentence. It delays the action and makes us think there's another verb coming. So let's get rid of the one with the ing and let's circle the one right here with the correct verb hit. And most importantly, we've corrected this modifying phrase so that walking down the street is correctly referring to the subject of the sentence. In both cases, you can ask yourself about this modifying phrase, which often begin with ings. Notice the ing functions okay in the modifying phrase, just not as the main verb in a sentence. In both of these cases, we can ask ourselves, who or what is walking down the street? Or who or what is doing the action in the modifying phrase? who or what has been selected by NASA in the previous sentence. So both of these are cases of misplaced modifiers. These usually appear in this style of question, which we're going to call sentence correction. And this is a common mistake that you can easily avoid. So now you know the deal with misplaced modifiers, and go out there and get a great score.